Part 3, Days 5 and 6. Welcome to the Old Hobo channel. I'm the Old Hobo. Our boat is a 1971 Hobo houseboat, and it is the namesake of the channel. This spring we cruised over 500 miles on the St. Johns River in Florida. My wife and I spent 21 days on the water, and I'll be releasing our trip in segments. Our goal was to traverse the entire length of the St. Johns, the navigable length, with as many side trips on the creeks and springs off the main river as possible. Please subscribe for the entire series and for other Old Hobo content. We'll start with day 5. We did 27 miles. You can see the total travel there from Tick Island Creek, where we anchored with a stop in Astor, a little side trip to Blue Creek, and to Glen Springs. A little more detail here is given for the first part of our trip. You can see we went through shallow Lake Dexter and got to Astor. The Tick Island anchorage was very nice, wild, and natural, and it was protected for us. Our first challenge of the day was getting through Lake Dexter. It's very shallow. There are lots and lots of old pilings that are marked. I don't know if they exist or not. Many fishing boats and vegetation in random locations. So this is just an approximation there of our route. We had to dodge every obstacle possible to get through. Alligator, the second one crossing the river. He just submerged there. So where is he? From Lake Dexter, we got back onto the St. Johns River, heading north towards Astor. We saw two of the largest alligators we ever saw crossing the river to the west. We stopped in Astor just for a washroom break and then continued our journey. We had a little side trip onto Blue Creek and then onto Lake George to Glen Springs.
Astor.
We got back on the river, heading north. The gas dock there we could have used, but it was closed. A lot of things are closed. The Drifters Riverfront Bar and Grill, we could have had our lunch there, but it was closed also. Crossing under the bridge, we don't need a lift at all on our boat. There's lots of clearance. We said goodbye to Astor, and we continued to look for the cutoff for Blue Creek and look for the entrance, and there are pilings there. It's maybe a 10-foot clearance between, and we headed up the creek.
We've entered Blue Creek. It's almost like a canal with some homes on it.
More birdhouses.
And there's more birdhouses here. People hang up birdhouses in the trees. It's very narrow, has restricted access at the mouth. There's pylons placed up there so big boats can't get in. We got in here with Andrew driving well, and we're just taking a look. It says manatee zone, slow speed.
We entered the southern entrance to Blue Creek, and there are quite a few homes and docks and boats on that section, and then you get in a little further and it's all natural. And we saw, of course, manatees just briefly surfacing, and some other wildlife. Also lots of birdhouses. We were quite taken with that, looking at birdhouses, seeing how many we could see. It was quite an interesting way to decorate and make Blue Creek your own, I guess.
This is the first large boat that we've seen on these waters.
Other than the riverboat on day 1, this was the biggest boat we'd seen so far on this trip. That's where Blue Creek comes out on the north end. That's actually Blue Island, but we couldn't make it through there because of the floating vegetation. So we came via the St. Johns, and there is Lake George, and we'll head over that way to Glen Springs. Entering Lake George. This is just a little bit of a wake from that big guy here. We've got a strong tailwind, so we're not going to have any splashing over the bow. The waves don't look too bad anyhow. Lake George is shallow and has a long north-south fetch with significant potential for waves. Our HOBO is a fair weather boat. We prefer creeks and small exposed waters, not so much.
We're heading to Lake George right now. We're on Lake George, heading to Glen Springs. We're on the high seas for this little boat, but it's managing with Captain Andrew at the helm. So I just battened down the refrigerator. It stuck out. I should have battened it down, but it's okay. So we're on our way. Crossing Lake George. It's pretty rough. However, we have been on the Detroit River with waters like this. This is about the limit for this little Erie hobo. But we're making it. We'll get there. That was a big one. Wow. Okay. Signing off for now. This is a back view of the waves. We're trying to figure out whether we should ride the front of the wave or the back with this little boat. But seems if we keep ahead, it's better. We have about a mile to go now to our cutoff, so the boat is handling things well. Okay.
So as we approach Glen Springs, we're watching the chart plotter and also the depth we're reading on the sonar. It can be quite shallow, far out, like 5 feet, 4 feet, even the odd spot you might find 3 foot and so on. When we crossed here, I'm trying to remember, I think it was maybe 3.5 feet to cross the bar. There's a cruiser there. He's got the one good spot near the entrance to beach. Those little islands there, it's too shallow around them, unless you're just going to run it into the mud, I guess. We did see one manatee, numerous turtles, and we saw a lot of the human creatures around, but it wasn't as crowded as I've heard it can be. This was early in the week, so I think actually it was a Monday. We're now in just past a small campground and/or marina, and there's buoyed off area to the left and to the right. It's like a big loop, and you can anchor in the middle, or that's what people tend to do, and swim and get out. In our case, we beached off to the left side. Glen Springs. That beyond the buoy line is the spring itself, and folks are here. I've seen on Google Earth this place packed with about 5 times more people. There is a group called Save Our Springs, and they want to restrict or eliminate anchoring and mooring here. That's the way we came in. And we are off for a swim. Yeah. There are 2 resident dogs here on the private property we're beached at. While crossing Lake George, yeah, just take that off. This thing came loose because we forgot to put the bungee cord across, and I've never showed this. Was a project this winter. We've got a new refrigerator to replace the Coolatron thermoelectric cooler with this, and honestly, I forget the name brand. It's a Bouge RV, Bougerv, and I forget how many liters it is, but it's pretty big and substantial. It's much more efficient. You can set the temperature. We've got it set at 40. It's capable of freezing, I think going down to 8 Fahrenheit. I made this insulated cover for about 80 bucks. You can buy a cover, but I made some this Reflectix foam and bubble wrap aluminum clad stuff, and it works pretty good. This thing only runs maybe 10% of the time. You'll hear it cycle. It uses 40 watts when it does run, and along with the enhanced solar, I added another 100 watts of solar, so we have 300 watts of solar. Underneath here we now have two 100 amp hour lithium batteries that replace the two 100 amp hour lead acid batteries, which the lead acid batteries could only put out 50% of their capacity before they get to a voltage where they'd be damaged. With lithium you can get down to 20% or even less, so you actually have more capacity that's usable overnight. And we find that we look here, 13.87 volts, so we can get up to 14.2 as fully charged. This right now is very well charged. Most of the life of a battery, of a lithium battery, when it's discharging, is 13.2 volts. We prepared to leave Silver Glen Springs, and indeed we did go out onto Lake George and head north. Our plan was to anchor the night in Salt Springs Run, but the lake had other plans. It had gotten quite rough. The wind had picked up, so we went out a mile or two and turned right back. Okay, we ended up coming back to anchor, so there's one channel in there and channel out here, so we're just in the middle. Other friends, folks, they live in Astor. They're Canadians, been here for 25 years or so, so we talked to them a bit. Anyhow, we found the lake too rough, so we're in here for the night. We looked forward to day 6, total of 33 miles traveled. It's 5 after 7 in the morning, very quiet. We had a few splooshes in the night, and it was probably turtles. I see a fish actually out there. Yeah, there are neighbors there. We're going to take off here. Just at first light, it's calm. The Lake George should be calm. This is the ideal way to start your day. The moon was still visible, the sun was just coming up, everything was still and quiet, no wind within the spring. We hope the same going on the lake, and the lake did not surprise us. It was relatively calm. The winds picked up a little bit later as we got towards our destination of Salt Springs. Much smoother on Lake George this morning.
The sun and the moon. Now we are approaching Salt Springs Run after we've left the Spring Glen.
It took us an hour to get from Silver Glen Springs to the entrance of Salt Springs Run. It's calmed down a little here. I see it cuts left. Okay, good. 3.5 feet. It's actually more like 4 to 4.5 feet because it underreads here the way it's set. 5 feet. Okay, it's deeper. Okay, and just let's see to the left. What's there? Salt Springs Run is opening up. Yeah. This is Salt Springs Run. We've got about a 4-mile trip up to the town of Salt Springs.
Hello there. After about an hour on Lake George and about 1 foot to 1.5 foot waves, we entered Salt Springs Run. And I'm not sure, but some of these trees seem to be turning color, the leaves, like that bush right there. It's very nice. with Captain Andrew at the helm. We're going to Salt City at the, what is it? Salt Springs City. Salt Springs, it's like a town.
Okay, this was Lake George. It's actually Salt Cove. North is actually that direction. So we entered here, which is very interesting. It didn't look like an entrance. You made an immediate left turn. Fortunately, the waves here had settled down. As they had built a bit, they were like 2 foot sometimes. And we come in through here, and we work all our way up here to Salt Springs. And then there's a dam. Beyond that, there is a little lake and so on that I assume is the source. But there's a dock here. We're going to stop. We're going to make our breakfast because we had an early start this morning to beat the waves. Talk about meeting or exceeding expectations for this boating trip. This was a fantastic time today. There's some really beautiful stuff here on the way in. Yeah, we're watching for debris in the water, and there's sticks and things like that, things that shed from the palm trees. There are really too many sights and sounds and colors to explain or to describe. You have to get out there on the water and see this stuff. If you can see the red buoys, these are crab pots. So crab pots are not only out on Lake George, but they have them in here on the Salt Springs Creek. I said Salt Springs Run before, it's Salt Springs Creek. The first mate, who is a captain in her own right, is conning the old hobo, or the Erie hobo. The character of Salt Spring Run changed a bit as we got in deeper. There were grasslands, marshlands, and it finally opened up into sort of a bay at the end, and that's where the ramp was. There's a bait store there, some restrooms. We went to the end of the road. Our big objective was to get some coffee and maybe a little bit of lunch, and we got there and at the highway. Here we are, and it's closed Tuesdays. That was bad. So we headed back. Well, we were on our lookout on the way back for a place to eat, so we stopped at a really nice place near the entrance, and it was on this S-bend, very close to Lake George. And again, you cannot pay for this kind of view or this kind of experience, only on a boat, and this is why we like to vacation on boats. So we're back onto Lake George.
Hello, this is the Erie Hobo on Tuesday, March 25th, I think it is. We're headed 26. Towards 26th. We are headed to Welaka, and for lunch or around lunch we were at the Salt Springs ramp in a National Wildlife Refuge area. We came out of there and headed across the northwest corner of Lake George. The waves were manageable for this little boat, so we were happy about that. And now we're pretty much headed into the St. Johns River proper, and we're going to be in Welaka in about 3 miles, something like that.
This is Little Lake George. We go up there around a bit left and then right, and we're in Welaka, where we hope to stay the night. Here we are, looking this way, that way. That's where we came in on the St. Johns. Little Lake George is not far north of Lake George. The previous map showed how we got out onto Lake George, and we went into the river, and we got up into Little Lake George, Little Lake, and we get close to Welaka, and you see a lot more homes, a lot more fine homes. Welaka has a nice dock. It's a good looking dock, and restrooms, a restaurant. It's all looks pretty ideal, and we intended to stay there. It was perfect. However, we had an experience when a cruiser went by right close to the dock and rocking our boat. We happened to be there and prevent damage, but the docks bounce up and down. Your boat bounces up and down. Woo.
This is Welaka. We docked there at a floatable, free public dock, but the wake from a bigger boat traveling on the river really was not good. Our boat was bouncing, so we had to untie the Erie hobo and head out to another anchorage.
The spring is just north of Welaka and around the corner. You can see Turkey Island, the large island that is used as an anchorage for larger boats, but we had our eye on the spring. It indicated pretty shallow depths, but we thought we'd give it a go, and we were pleasantly surprised.
We've just come into Welaka Springs.
The little cove around the spring seemed private enough, though we realized it was really just a fringe. There was habitation beyond. This is kind of special. We have Welaka Spring all to ourselves. This one must not have a lot of flow. There's not the clear water really, but it's a nice little hole here, 5 feet right up to there, 4 feet at the edges. So we're just swinging on one anchor. That's the Floridian Club. It seems to have a nice clubhouse up there, and there are a couple houses here, but right here we're all by ourselves. Made a comment about this water not looking that clear, but here's the water we just drew from here. It is clean. The other stuff is brown when you're just in the regular lake or river system. So this spring is active. Maybe it doesn't have as much flow as the other ones, but looks good. This ought to get some views for the channel. This not so much.
This is Dad taking a bath at, what was this?
Welaka Springs.
Welaka Springs. Such clean water. It's beautiful here.
Oh, clear. I just can't believe how peaceful this is and beautiful. Here we are just swinging on our anchor very slowly. Fish are jumping. We see occasional turtle. It's just really beautiful. And we each just had ourselves a bath. We didn't jump into the water today, but just put on our bathing suits and doused ourselves with water. It just feels good because it is warm. It's around 80 or so, and the sun is bright. Okay, there's some steak. It's been marinating, and we're gonna have our Grand Speeds and his wife Marianne. Here more than 7. That's the end of our day 6. I hope that you will subscribe and look out for the remainder of our 21-day trip as it is edited and posted.